If you're like me, anime ni jikan suru wibu desu, then you have probably come across a rivalry or two in your day. And they're cool, they're awesome. But sometimes we have to stop and ask ourselves, what even is a rivalry? Well, that's what we're here for today. The rivalry, as a concept in literature, can be derived from many sources. It is unclear where it really started. The word itself comes from Middle French, rivalis, which defines a very specific scenario wherein two men are drinking from the same fountain. Based on this word, we can already see where this is coming from and where this is going. We have two entities, or more, that are competing for a resource, or something. So, rivalries are key to competition, and competition itself is also key to rivalry. Now, this is a lot of boring shit. How do we relate this to the cool shit, which is anime? Well, if we look at rivalries in anime, you will often see that they do fight over resources, but not necessarily resources in the conventional sense. For example, the most classic rivalry of all, Goku and Vegeta, very good year, centers essentially not about a life-changing resource, but about status, about self-worth, about knowing who is stronger. And fundamentally, that is a type of rivalry that would remain relevant in a lot of shonen anime. Now, there are rivalries in sports anime and there are rivalries in all types of manga, but I don't read those, so we're staying in shonen. If you don't like it, find another channel, I guess. But anyway, in shonen, that change of status, that power hierarchy between two people is often the centerpiece of rivalry. It is about who is better, who is stronger, who is the mostest anime boy. And that often coincides with battling and competition in the physical sense, which is great for us viewers because then we get to see some cool animation and some cool panels. However, I think it's also worthwhile to reference the fact that these rivalries have branched off into different subcategories. Perhaps it's also valuable to see what steps and forms does rivalry even take. For example, a rivalry is often produced when character A realizes that they are in a relationship with character B. Now get your mind out of the gutter, it's not that type of relationship. Again, find other channels for that. No, the relationship here is a relationship of power, a relationship of, am I stronger than them? Am I more important than them? Am I more socially accepted than them? And if the answer to any of those is no, and if character A's ego is big enough, a rivalry is born. Now, that rivalry can be one-sided, like, for example, to get back at Goku and Vegeta, where Vegeta very much cares about their relationship of power, whereas Goku is generally nonplussed. Don't eat me, Dragon Ball Tube. I'm sure there's an obscure translation somewhere that says that he actually loves competing with Vegeta, but see you all in court, I guess. But this one could define as a one-sided rivalry, a rivalry that is much more perceivable on one end of the relationship. If we move this over to something like Naruto and Sasuke, we can see that both of them see themselves as the rival of the other. They are an accepting rivalry, and they push each other forward through that, and they benefit for it. However, if you've listened to me talk all about this competition and this element of wanting to be better than the other, you might be thinking, Dennis, that's an awfully wonderful shirt. Thank you, it's actually really nice, I really love it. But also, that is kind of unhealthy, isn't it? And I think this is where we can make an interesting delineation. Because rivalries can technically be separated into healthy and unhealthy rivalries, rather than reciprocal and non-reciprocal rivalries. Now, what do we mean by unhealthy? Let's go back to the second super classic example, Sasuke and Naruto. While their rivalry starts out pretty cool, they help each other out, they make sure that the other gets better and better, it eventually turns quite toxic. And the turning point for that is when Sasuke essentially starts associating the rivalry and his position within the rivalry as an indication of how far he has come in his actual life goal, which is of course to avenge his clan and to overcome his trauma. Once he connects his trauma to the rivalry with Naruto, he essentially starts becoming addicted to the idea of being better than Naruto, to the point where he feels that he must be better at all costs. Now, granted, this is not his active characterization. He doesn't go rogue just because he's weaker than Naruto, but it is a key element because he sees his relationship and his power dynamic to Naruto as an indication of his position in the world itself. And that is what snaps him and puts him onto the path to darkness, which makes him suffer and makes Naruto suffer. In fact, one could say that Naruto's obsession with Sasuke and inability to let go is even worse, because it leads him to hyperventilation, to obsessive behavior, to the neglect of his career. He's a genin by the end of the show, nonetheless, and, to pardoning a terrorist. So clearly there is an element of unhealthy toxicity here. Now, let's move this over to what I would consider a healthy rivalry, which comes from a very recent show, which is Jujutsu Kaisen. If you look at the rivalry between Megumi Fushiguro and Yuji Itadori, you will notice that it's even hard to call it a rivalry. And the main reason is that they are super nice to each other. Sure, they do have the initial trash talk that you need to have in your first couple of episodes of anime, but they're actually really supportive. They communicate clearly about what they want and why they want it. Yuji and Megumi both want to become stronger in order to enact upon their resolutions regarding the salvation of people. Both are noble goals, but they both have different ways of going about it, where Yuji wants to save everyone and Megumi wants to save only a select few. And so, in order to stand for what they believe in, they choose to lift each other up and become stronger through competition. But they remain friendly, they remain supportive, even when they have their smack talk where it's like, oh, I will surpass you, Itadori. It is still fundamentally framed as, you inspire me, you make me want to become stronger. And that is way more healthy than pretty much anything Naruto and Sasuke had. Quick note, this is not an indictment on Sasuke and Naruto's quality of relationship, nor on the quality of Naruto in the show. I just thought I'd clear that up. Like, Naruto is fantastic, it's one of my favorite shows, and like, you get the gist. Okay. So, we can differentiate between healthy and unhealthy rivalries. But I think there is another trick to this, which is when you switch them up. Because of course, a story isn't static. A story doesn't just stay in the same position all the time. No, a story moves forward. And so, a rivalry can also move through various stages. If we look again at Naruto and Sasuke, their rivalry goes from mostly neutral at the start, where, they're chilling, they're vibing, to deeply toxic and unhealthy for both parties, which we can contrast with another show that I like very much, which is My Hero Academia. The rivalry between Katsuki Bakugo and Izuku Midoriya starts about as toxic as you can get. It literally starts with kill yourself. And that's pretty bad. See you next time. However, it is made clear that that is not a state they can realistically stay in. At the latest, by the summer exam arc, we get to see that this attitude of theirs is fundamentally destructive to both of them. Sure, they are generally motivated to surpass the other, and that does help them in certain aspects, but the absolute breakdown of collaboration and communication that happens as soon as they have to actually talk to each other and plan during a mission and an exercise, they just break down. They just stop being able to perform as heroes, and that is a pretty severe roadblock if you want to be a professional superhero. Luckily, the story knows this, and so it portrays this as objectively a thing they need to work on, and work on it they do, because at the end of the next season, they have their heart-to-heart. They do what boys do. They talk to each other in the middle of the night, they get very close and beat the shit out of each other. College days. And after that, their rivalry becomes incredibly healthy. Right now in the manga, they are actively actively supportive of each other. Sure, Bakugo is still screamy because, apparently that gets you #1 in popularity polls. I mean, I'm not a scientist. But they are very clearly trying to help each other. Bakugo tries to tell Deku how to use his quirk better. Deku isn't afraid of Bakugo anymore and actively seeks his advice. This is a great example of how to evolve a rivalry as a way to evolve two characters at the same time. And I think that is a very elegant way of using a rivalry. However, rivalries are not just there for character development. They can also be there to signify themes, to signify a general idea within the story. Be less of a character tool and more of a thematic tool. For example, if we return to Naruto real quick, Naruto and Sasuke's rivalry is as much about the themes of Naruto as it is about the characters themselves. Naruto is a story about many things. In fact, I would say at times it's a story about too many things. However, one thing that is continuous within the story is the idea of connections, of the bonds that people can share with each other. Naruto and his story represents the ability to seek those bonds against all odds, against even reason, seeking bonds with people that reasonably you really shouldn't seek to. Meanwhile, Sasuke is the other extreme, someone who sees power in severing those bonds, the Uchiha blood in him literally becoming stronger as he cuts off and cuts down friends. This way, you create a duality, you create a clash between two thematic ideas, and you make it within a character relationship. And you could say, sure, this is writing 101, but it really isn't. Try writing a rivalry for one time that actually does all of this. Because as much shit as I'm willing to give some of the authors I've mentioned, I'm still deeply impressed that one can bind rivalries to the themes and the characters in ways that feel cohesive. Goku and Vegeta, Naruto and Sasuke, Fushiguro and Itadori, Izuku and Katsuki. All of these rivalries feel natural. These characters feel relatively well fleshed out to different degrees and consistent within their own logic, except, Vegeta and Goku, but that's because they're in Dragon Ball, and Dragon Ball has been a hot mess for the last 5 years, but hey, I didn't tell you that. But either way, this is a great example of a literary device that has so many uses, so many iterations, that it's almost hard to make a video like this. But if there's one point I want you to get out of this, is that rivalry is not a static term. It's not one thing. There are multiple aspects that flow into it. Competition, toxicity, jealousy, support, and a bit of tension. And all of these things make a rivalry what it is. Now, we're getting to the end of the video, and you might be asking yourself, Dennis, what's the point? How does this relate to real life at all? Well, to put it in the Christian way, if you want to heighten your performance in real life, go beat up your best friend. Anime ni jika. Yeah, I don't actually speak a single word of Japanese. I have this thing called linguistic mimicry, where I can copy sounds essentially. I don't know if that's something anyone can do, but it's a thing I can do. So yeah, I can't speak Japanese. I literally had Google Translate open over there on the PC and had it speak it out loud to me before recording, just so I could know how to pronounce it. I hope it was right. I'm pretty sure I butchered it. I don't even know if the translation is correct, to be honest. If you're Japanese watching this, I am so sorry. Trust me, I only did it because I think your language sounds awesome. Mwah, love you. And of course, we can't leave without mentioning the patrons. Thank you all so much for supporting this. I know this was something completely different, but I moved out and I thought, hey, I have this extra corner in my room, might as well. But anyway, thank you to all my patrons, especially, of course, to the big boys like Christian Finkbeiner, Sini, Paraja, Sini again, because brain, Fiction 8, Mr. Meander, and Victor Perez. Thank you all so much for supporting me, and let me know if you enjoyed this. I might do more of this. I enjoyed it. It's hella fun, and it's gonna be easier to edit, so you know. Anyway, take care, wash your hands, I'll see you around.